Hi guys, welcome back. In this video we are going to put together the skills that we've been building in the last couple sections, and we are going to factor a trinomial. So a trinomial has three parts, hence the name tri. So the first part here, or the first term, is going to be this x squared, this minus 10x, and this plus 24 in this first problem. In the second problem down here, we're going to have an x squared plus 1x and minus 6. So both of these have three terms, three parts, and we're going to use a diamond puzzle and the factor out the greatest common factor. So the first thing we're going to use is the diamond puzzle. So I'm going to draw that familiar X shape. I'm not going to draw the diamond all around here. I'll draw like some dashed lines just quickly. So I'm not going to draw that around. I'm just going to draw the X on the inside. But just like we had previously, on the top, I'm going to put the two numbers multiply together. And on the bottom, I'm going to put what those two numbers add up to be. So the two numbers that we're going to use is 1, because that's the number in front here. That's how many x squareds we have. So we're going to take 1 and 24. That's the number on here, including this sign. That's a positive 24. So I multiply 1 and positive 24 together, and I get positive 24. The number that they need to add together to be is going to be this term in the middle. Sometimes you hear it referred to as a B term because we refer to this number out front as A, this number in the middle is B, and this number on the end is C. So sometimes up here you'll see us do like A times C and then add together to give us B. That's just some symbols and notation that you might see. So using our diamond puzzle process, we know that we have two numbers that need to multiply to give us 24 and add together to give us negative 10. So because this number is positive, that tells me that they have to be the same. And because this is a minus 10, that tells me I'm looking for two numbers that multiply together to give me, or that are going to both be negative in order to multiply to give me that positive. So I could try negative 1 and negative 24. That's a possibility, but that wouldn't add to give me negative 10. Next number in line then would be 2. Negative 2 is going to go into 24. Negative 2 times negative 12. I could do negative 3 times negative 8 and negative 4 times negative 6. That's my list of numbers that would all multiply together to give me a positive 24 because a negative times a negative results in a positive because we are multiplying. So when I look through that list, what do they add together to be? Which of those would add together to give me negative 10? That's going to be this negative 4 and this negative 6. What we use those two numbers for is splitting up this middle term. So this is going to become a minus 4x and a minus 6x. So those two numbers, if I were to add them together, if I were to reverse this process, would give me negative 10x. Those two negatives add together to give negative 10x. Then we're just going to drop down these other two numbers. So that plus 24 and that x squared. So now we're going to take a look at just the first two here, and we're going to do that greatest common factor work. So what do these two both have in common? Well, I can't see any numbers that they both have in common, any coefficients, but they do have an x in common. So I'm going to factor out that x from these first two. And that leaves me with an x minus 4. So in this first term, I look for, okay, I see an x squared, so that means I have two x's, so I took one of those out. And same thing here, because it's multiplied by both of those, we are unmultiplying. Remember that factoring is the inverse of multiplication. It's undoing that multiplication step. Then right here, we look for what do both of these have in common? Well, both of these have a factor of 6. 24 is a multiple of 6. We saw that over here. So if I take that 6 out, a negative 6 actually, that's going to leave me with, well, I take out a negative 6 from this term, and that leaves us with just that positive x, because when we remove the negative, it flips to a positive. Here, when I divide or factor out that negative, it's going to leave me with another negative number. It's going to leave us with negative 4. Now this is the step that's a little bit of a challenge to see, but just like what we did here, where we looked at, okay, both of these have a factor of negative 6, we are also going to factor out this number. So I'm going to factor out the term that they both have in common. Both of these have an x minus 4 that we can factor out. That term appears here and here. So when I remove that, if I unmultiply or factor out that x minus 4, just like here and here I factored out an x. I unmultiplied what they had in common. What we're left with is an x and a minus 6. That is the factored form. That's my final answer, is x minus 4 in parentheses times x minus 6. In the past, we've done some multiplication problems like we did last week, and if you were to undo that, or if you were to multiply, that would be each one of these steps in that process if you were to factor that out. We're going to do that one more time with this. So again, I draw my x, and we're going to factor it. So I have at the top is that a times c, that two numbers. This is the number 1 and negative 6. They multiply together to give us negative 6. And on the bottom here, I need two numbers that add together to give me this number right here. So this number, the coefficient, the number in front, is 1. Well, things that multiply to give me negative 6, that could be a negative 1 and a positive 6, or positive 1 and a negative 6. That could be a negative 2 and a positive 3, or positive 2 and a negative 3. Looking through that list, the combination of numbers that would add together to give me a positive 1 are going to be these two right here. So I can ignore everything else on that list. Just like up here, we could ignore everything else on this list once we've identified the two numbers that we're interested in. So I need a negative 2 and a positive 3. We use those to then break apart that middle number. So we're going to make that into two separate terms, a minus 2x and a positive 3x. If I were to undo that step, if I were to reverse this, I would still have 1x. So these two add together to still give us that 1x. Then we bring down that minus 6. We bring down that x squared. And we group them together. What do these first two have in common? Well, these first two have a multiple of x. When I remove that x, that leaves us with 1x. We had 2. Now we only have 1. We took away this x, so now we have just that minus 2 left. Here, between these third and fourth terms, we have a positive 3. That's a multiple. So that leaves us with an x and a minus 2. Then we can look for, okay, again, I have the same thing. This x minus 2 appears in both of those. So just like earlier, how we factored out a 3 and we factored out an x out of each of those, we factor out that x minus 2, that entire term. What we're left over with when we remove that x minus 2 is we have just this x here. We remove this x minus 2, and we have just that plus 3. And that is our final answer. All right, that's how we factor trinomials, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day.